Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we have just had probably the biggest information drop about the new major content piece that is coming in, by the sounds of it, in the next couple of weeks. I'm talking about the free city of Sintranos. They're calling it the Cursed City. This is the content that we have been told is bigger than Doom Tower. That's an important thing I want to have out right now. Cyrilla, in her interview, said this content is bigger than Doom Tower. So I've been really excited about this up until today. And I kind of want to put a little bit like, I'm going to put an asterisk on this video and say, look, I don't know all of the details. I don't have everything written out. So I'm not passing final judgment until I see the what's next video. It's in the game. I have a chance to look at all the reward structures and the models that they have created. However, there are big red flags that are coming out of this raid digest, and also some of the social media stuff that they've been talking about and some of the things they've been leaking that makes me question whether or not it's actually bigger than Doom Tower and whether they've actually added anything really new. Let's talk about this update here. I'm going to go through the raid digest paragraph by paragraph because essentially each one has its own different context and different things. Okay, so the next major update is nearly around the corner, so let's start with the most significant piece of content. First thing we're going to talk about here is the rumor that I basically said isn't likely to be the case, and as I thought, it was correct. There's a rumor that your path through Sintranos will be blocked unless you can bring fully awakened champions to the fight, which is not exactly the case, which is what I thought it would be. I didn't think it would be tied, that you would need 6 stars, because I just think that's way too restrictive. True, a small number of stages require number of blessing stars per team, but there is no minimum blessing requirements per champion. Furthermore, those stages are optional and do not bar the passage to the main boss, so it is possible to choose another path and avoid them altogether. Now, here's the thing. This is where I'm asterisk and that I don't know the context. I don't know in terms of the path. They've said this is going to be the non-linear progression, which I just assume means that there are some paths you can take to get bonus rewards. It's not going to block you, right? It just basically means it's a bit like secret rooms in Doom Tower, right? You climb it, that's linear, but the non-linear stuff is the secret rooms. You don't actually have to do it. It happens at different points in time. I assume that's what they mean. But in this case, it's kind of like almost trying to explain what a circle is without saying it's a circle, but it is still a circle. So what I mean by that is they're essentially saying you don't need minimum blessings per champions, but effectively you do, because you're going to need minimum blessings per team. So if you go to a stage and you need 20 blessings on your team, that means on average every champion in your team is going to be 4-star awakened, right? You might get lucky and you might have a 6-star or 5-star. The probability is more people have 1 star or 2 stars than they do 6 stars. So what happens if we enter a threshold where the minimum number per average per champion is 4? They may not do that. It may cap at 15. I don't know. But essentially, by saying there's no minimum blessing requirement per champion, it's technically true, but there's still going to be an average expectancy that you still need to bring awakened champions. And because it's an optional stage, it's going to be like secret rooms where you're going to want to do them. It's going to probably have the best rewards. If you don't do them, then you're going to miss out. So whichever way you spin this, you've created a game mode that is behind an awakening system. And I suppose it scales to this, as long as it's reasonably accessible in the sense that, maybe you need 5 for the highest one, that the hardest one you need 5. As average, everyone needs to be awakened, but you might be able to do it in 1. The problem is that's too simple a little bit, right? So it's almost like if you create a game mode here, which requires awakening, then it has to be significant enough to make that relevant. Otherwise, it's forgettable. And that's what they do a lot of times in game design in Raid. The Shogun boss is a classic example. The awakening thing is relevant, but the majority of us just don't even consider about awakening stuff now, because you can kill it without any souls. So it means that they didn't make it significant enough that it was relevant to it unless you just completely didn't apply any team balance at all. But souls don't actually help you in Shogun at all, other than making you kill the boss more easier, because most people will use their Gnut and they will use some form of like Mithrala, Cold Heart combo, and they kill it before that's even a problem. I'm a bit worried at this point that that's kind of like you're putting in a system that you're going to have to make significant enough for it to be impacting your decision as to whether you do it. You're probably going to tie the best rewards behind it. And even though you're saying you don't have to be fully awakened, you still have to be a level of awakening. That one paragraph is the one that I want to see more detail on more than anything. That's not the one that's giving me a major red flag. That's almost like an amber flag for me. But what I will say on that one is you don't have to be fully awakened, which I thought would always be the case. So all the doomsayers out there will say it's going to be the most pay to win content. This is where sometimes you need to wait for more information and confirmation, right? It's clearly was never going to be that, because that would just restrict even like the Krakens a little bit, who don't have 6-star awakened for certain champions you might need. Let's move on to the next paragraph. Many players have been asking about the overall level of challenge of the new content. This is very important, right? Especially for players in like the 3-year, 4-year veteran phase, who are either starting to think, well, maybe I'll quit, or maybe they're hanging around because they don't have anything to do, but they've been promised this new major content piece. So it's like, well, I'll have something to do when it comes out. This is very important. It's also important that new players can access it, right? So difficulty curve here is massively important for this new major content piece. Well, it's not going to be a walk in the park for certain, but neither does it belong exclusively to late game. Sintranos opens its gate at level 52. Level in raid is a bit subjective, because technically you could just run campaign over and over and over again. That doesn't mean you've progressed anywhere. Like, progression is not tied to the account level, but it's the easiest way to do it. We'll have 2 difficulty levels at release. I thought it might be this, but this is where red flags start flagging up. And you need to prevail in each encounter only once before the reset, so you don't have to pursue extreme time efficiency for farming. You may consider the hard level of Doom Tower a rough reference point to the maximum difficulty level, as far as it's possible to compare 2 different pieces of content. This is red flag number 1. If you're going to set the highest difficulty to hard level Doom Tower, it's too easy. You have added 300% stat bloat since Doom Tower has come out. You've added empowerment, you've added awakening, you've added strong blessing stats, you've added artifact ascension. If I'm basically having to do hard Doom Tower difficulty, I'm going to auto farm that in my current position, and I'm not even a Kraken. I am an endgame player that's been playing for 4 years. I've spent a bit of money on the game, but I'm nowhere near the tiers of Kraken level. I'm nowhere near the tiers of like some other players who've spent a lot of money. This is going to be auto-farmed. Now, I like the fact that there's a normal difficulty, because I think that made sense, right? It made sense that you could go through the city of Sintranos and complete it as a normal player, a bit like you can complete normal Doom Tower. But this literally just feels like 2 difficulty levels, which is Doom Tower. You have to go through various floors, which we'll see in a minute, which is Doom Tower. And it's going to be the difficulty of hard Doom Tower. So it's too easy. That's a red flag for me. Like, it's not hard enough, which means it's going to be like what people have to remember is, if you have 2 Gnoots, you think every single boss has 100% HP. If you have 2 Gnoots, you're already killing 60% of the boss's HP in 1 rotation. So if the content is not going to change the way max HP works, and we're not going to balance the champions, you have to come up with some ways to make it hard enough that you're not just going to instantly walk in with one team and one-shot everything, and that could be the case, right? Hard Doom Tower for most people is Seer, reset, reset. Now, you may be able to stop that, but if it's the challenge level of hard Doom Tower, I'm worried that is not hard enough. Let's move on. Let's keep going. In terms of tactics, different battles might impose different restrictions. So maintaining a diverse roster gives you an upper hand. So those are secret rooms, right? They're basically going to go, in this fight, you have to use 2 epic champions. In this fight, you have to use 5 rank 6 champions. In this fight, you have to use 2 factions from the Galian Pact. Probably what is going to happen there, right? We're not going to be... I can't imagine they've found some other mechanic to do that. Though the ultimate boss is a brand new enemy, on the way you may cross paths with some bosses you have already met before. This means you don't have to analyze entirely new enemies, yet you may face well-known adversaries under new tactical circumstances. Why can't we have new enemies? Where did we ever say that we wanted it to be easy enough that we just had to fight Ice Golem again? I never said that. I actually said I don't want to fight Ice Golem again, right? I already have to fight 2 versions of Fire Knight. I already have to fight 2 versions of Spider, 2 versions of Dragon, although they're very similar. 2 versions of Ice Golem. There's difficulty scales in Hydra. There's difficulty scales in Doom. I don't want to fight the Scarab King in a different format. That's just not engaging to me, because it needed to be something different. So that's a bit of a red flag as well. Overall, we see Sintranos as a battleground for you to test new tactics and new champion combinations, not as harder version of the familiar events. Okay, so if they change this is a bit of like you say one thing, but you mean another thing. I don't really understand how this is going to work. They're basically saying in the first paragraph that they don't want you to have to learn new enemies. But in the next paragraph, they're saying you have to learn new tactics because we don't want you to do the same version, but difficult. So how does that work? How can you have the same boss with the same strategy, but have it not a harder version of it? It's a weird. This is where we need more detail, maybe. Maybe I'm over analyzing this. But that basically says I'm going to be fighting two versions of it. I'll show some social media posts in a second that kind of match up with this. On the grander strategic scale, a player has a month to fight their way through 100 stages on each difficulty level before their progress resets, which means around 4 fights per day on average for the absolute meticulous 100% completion, and no energy is required for the battle. We hope that making super raids permanent across many areas of the game next year will make it easier for you to focus on the city of Sintranos. Okay, so another red flag. This just sounds like Doom Tower 2.0. It basically sounds like I'm going to have 100 floors of normal, 100 floors of nightmare. There'll be some optional rooms, which are secret rooms. And then at the end, I'll fight a boss. And that boss will take me about maybe a month to figure out because there's only one boss. I'll put a team together and then I'll kill the boss. Along the way, I'll fight some different combinations of bosses I've already had, which is what you do in Doom Tower. And yes, it might be non-linear, as in you might be able to choose the path you go, but essentially you're just doing Doom Tower. I don't know, guys. What do you think? Am I just being a little bit too negative? I've been quite positive up about this up till now, but this is just telling me, I was told at the start by Cyrilla, this is bigger than Doom Tower. When Doom Tower came out, it had 120 floors twice, 12 different secret rooms, and it had 4 different bosses. Then they added 2 new bosses in a second rotation and 2 new bosses in a third rotation. So as a content piece, we got basically 240 twice, 3 times. We got over like 800 floors of different wave combinations, along with 24 times 3 different secret room combinations that we had to work to beat, and 8 different boss mechanics. That's the content size. That's the content size of Doom Tower. This one is going to have 100 stages on 2, so less different stages. Someone in my clan basically said they thought it was going to be roguelike. I don't think it's going to be roguelike because it hasn't actually mentioned that they're going to reset the floor configurations. It's going to be the same thing over and over again every single month. We're going to be fighting the same bosses we've always fought, and then there's one new boss. This isn't bigger than Doom Tower. It's smaller. Unless you haven't given me some more information, that is what this raid digest is telling me, that this content piece is going to be smaller than what we got in Doom Tower. So let me just have a look at some of the things to like clarify what I'm saying. So this is the map that they have sort of released ahead of time. This was done with the content creators. This is really exciting at the time because I thought, oh cool, there's 4 different areas. So what they're basically going to say, they'll probably be like 25 stages in Cobble Market, 25 in Dead Rise, 25 in Plague Home, and 25 in Soul Cross. You'll collect something in the, like, probably one of these optional rooms has the key or something to get to the big bad boss. Well, probably not actually, because they said that wouldn't be the case, but there'll be a key reward at the end or one of these particular fights that gives you the key to get into this tower. And then the tower is where you'll fight. Now, the good thing, there's no energy cost, right? So we can explore it, we can do whatever we want. That's great. That's actually very important. It also sounds like there's no daily limitation like Doom Tower. It sounds like you can explore as far as you want to go, but it just means you've got 100 floor in the month to do. They said, because the way they said it was like 4 average per day. So that does suggest you can go more fights per day. So I would imagine you can go as far as you want. They may stagger the release of some areas potentially, but it sounds like to me, all 100 stages are open. You just progress until you hit a wall, then you go and figure out how to beat it, then you hit the wall, right? But you will get to this boss. It doesn't really mention about any replayability. Like, they clearly said you don't farm anything. So what, I just kill the boss once? So there is a risk to that. If there's no, like, lockout, do I just reset day, go through, clear every single stage, win the game? Is that all I got? Is that basically my content piece that I just press auto and just go? Which is a bit of a concern for me as well. Like, the 2 areas I was concerned about before this raid digest, is there enough replayability to make it something more fun to do on a day-to-day basis rather than just doing the same old clan boss, the same old events? Is there actually a fun replayability arc to it? And is it just going to be the same bosses that we've had before in different combinations, but nothing original? So far, this sounds like there's one original boss. We can see here from this post that they've got about the Cursed City, how these stages are going to work. So clearly, you're going to go through different stages. You'll have different paths. This is the non-linear path. And the red flag is clearly the one where there's awakening. Now that we know that, the red ones are going to be the one where you have to be awakened. So they're going to be optional. If you look, they're never blocking the path. And I would imagine one of them is going to reward a big reward. You see there's some smaller ones and there's bigger ones. And then you fight the big boss at the end. So I would imagine you have to go to each region, collect all the keys, then you can go and fight the boss at the end. And that is how you complete that floor. Then once you've completed normal, you can go to hard and repeat the process. And likewise, we can see here as well, there is a double trouble. So in sort of the collab I did with Hell Hades, we were talking about the concept of, are they going to make duo bosses, right? It was saying you were going to see pairings of champions. So clearly, they're just going to take the Ice Golem boss with the Fire Knight boss and put them together and then balance it. I'm like, could we not come up with a new boss? Is that too difficult? You know, this isn't new content. This is recycling content, and that's important. That's a big difference, because essentially they've said they want you to be familiar with what these bosses are going to do. So Fire Knight will probably have his shield stack. Ice Golem will have his retaliation concept. So is it actually in like a fun thing for us to do as players to just basically fight everything from the Fire Knight and everything from the Ice Golem? Something's probably not going to be there because that's too strong as a challenge. So maybe it'll present some new arcs. When I see the what's next, perhaps my opinion will change. But right now, this feels very uninteresting to me because it's recycling the same bosses. I'm already fighting a hard mode of these. I don't want to have to fight a different mode of them again. And finally, then, this is the last point that they had today. This has come out. Great challenges come with great rewards. But are you prepared to face them? Tell us how far you've managed to push into the Cursed City on your first playthrough. Well, I'll tell you, if it's as hard as Hard Doom Tower, I will probably complete it on day one. And I'm not even a Kraken, right? Because essentially, I will just go through. I've got 200 champions. I've got every champion I need under the sun. It's going to be pretty straightforward for me to clear it. Now, it's probably worth me putting a bit of context on this. I'm looking at it from overall health in terms of like the people that I've seen that are saying we want something to do, that they've been playing the game for a long period of time, that this, you know, they've been promising us that all of this stat bloat, all of these things are going to be required for future content. This is the content that we believe is for. So I was expecting the hard version to be harder than content that was released 2 years ago, because you've given us so many more stats, right? Challenge us a little bit. I always advocated as well for people with smaller rosters, smaller, you know, earlier progression, newer players, people in the mid game, that they could still engage with the system, which they've done in a normal mode. That sounds good. But also that does worry me, like if you need lots of different types of champions for lots of different floors, is it going to be like you're roster locked because you haven't got lots of rosters for it? Which maybe that's fine. Maybe that's a progression state. But for big rosters, like because I have to do a champion training event every single fusion, I've got so many rank 6s that I don't even use because I needed to rank 6 someone to do it for training. So if someone comes along and goes, oh, that's Sikara Barbarian Epic actually is really good for this floor, I've already got a rank 6 of it. It's probably booked because I had to do it for clan versus clan, right? There's just, if you just make this that people in my position who have been waiting for this content that we've been told, all the awakening that we've been farming in, all the empowerment that we've been getting, all these faction guardians, all this stat bloat is designed for new content, and that new content is at the same difficulty scale as Hard Doom Tower. We need, like, honestly, I would have been happy if you just came out and said, we're making Ultra Hard Doom Tower. That would have given me something to do. We'll have to see. I do like the fact that maybe I was a bit judgmental at the start to say it's going to just be sear, reset, because it probably means you can't pick certain things in certain areas, so you have to have a different team for every single floor. So that's kind of good. You're not just going to be able to auto run through it. But we'll have to see. Maybe the detail still needs to be added, but this is more than enough detail now for me to make an initial summary judgment. And right now, what I'm feeling like is this bigger than Doom Tower content is essentially Doom Tower 2.0 with the same bosses in the dungeons and one new boss. And that is not bigger than Doom Tower that had 8 bosses, like multitudes of different types of secret rooms, over 800 different floor combinations, and that rotates every 3 months, you know, that changes all the time. Let me know, guys, what do you think about this updated information about the Sintranos City? I've been trying to stay positive about it because I think it needs to be a positive thing. This just has a number of red flags to me that I'm worried they're going to almost like aim for the skies and end up landing in a puddle down the street, if that makes sense, not really get it off the ground. So we'll have to see what happens. There is the Yule Tide Titan event that has started today. I do just want to make a quick comment about that as well, because I think there's I just want to like break through a little bit of noise that I'm seeing. So the big thing I kind of want to say is you've got 2,000 points you need to get your torment. I actually think getting a guaranteed torment is great. It's better than a 4-star soul. Even though souls are very good, I think a lot of people will benefit from having a torment. This is based on my experience with people struggling to get to Gold 1 Tag Team Arena for Romantu, struggling to build good arena teams, and also in Live Arena, this is a great 5th pick to almost force bans. You can use a lot of value in Torment. He's also great in a lot of Doom Tower floors if you don't have the Kaimar reset or lots of different things. He'll just freeze up those enemies when they try to do something. So it's a great champion to give us. I know it's an older Void Legendary, not one of the bigger ones, but in terms of what they could have given us, this is a great thing. But what I want to call out a little bit is this concept that they've given us 500 points, and that's really nice of them, because they technically haven't. If we look back to the Ultimate Death Knight Titan event. It's the same duration, it's the same structure, it's the same model. That one required you to get 1,500 points for the Ultimate Death Knight Soul. And you can make a case that, well, you're getting a champion this time, so it requires a stat bloat. That's not really what's happened. What they have done is they've gone, you're going to get 2,500 points in total. You need 2,000 to be able to get Tormin, but we're going to give you 500. So in actuality, they're trying to make it look like they're giving you something when it was already 1,500 with 2,000. They've increased it by 500 and then given you it back as a free gift to make it look like they're giving you something, which is a little bit like clever marketing, I guess. And it doesn't really affect you as a player. I just kind of want to call out a little bit, like, that makes me feel a bit uncomfortable because you're just trying to almost like wrap the wool over my eyes to make it all go away. No, you're not giving me anything for free. You're basically telling me I still have to do exactly the same thing I did with Ultimate Death Knight. You know, we can see already with the Summon Rush, I still absolutely have to go and get this 4,100 because if I already lose 200 of my 500 points, I can say with 95% confidence that there's going to be either a Deck of Fates or a Hero's Path, which has 250 to 350 of these tokens. So if I'm already down 200, I'm definitely going to have to do that Hero's Path, right? You're limiting my options already on day one. Day one, you're taking, you know, over near enough 50% of my available free points away from me. The only good news is it's a pretty good progressive event because if you don't have Warlord like me, you're like, I would really love a Warlord. And the legendaries you've got here, like Valkyrie is top tier in lots of places still. Arena, Clan Boss, Finite Hard. Archbishop Pinthroy is amazing for some of the end game bosses like Iron Twins, like Hydra. You get lots of cool things like increased accuracy, healing, support. Very, very good. Ultimate Death Knight, still technically arena meta. Most people have him, so they don't want another one. King Galkaba, I've actually put in here because he's very, very cool with what he does in terms of converting poisons. Actually, I've been surprised by some of the damage Galkabas that are out there. They've killed me at times. And Helikath, we all know, is very good for Clan Boss and Iron Twin. So the epic pool is great. You just don't really want to be pulling after like very expensive Summon Rushes. I feel like all we've had recently is Summon Rush after Summon Rush after Summon Rush. We had a Summon Rush event, a Summon Rush path, then another Summon Rush path. It's just like so like a Summon Rush Deck of Fates. It just feels like all we've had recently is a very strong like requirement to pull Sacred Shards. The good news is the fusion is going to be a little bit later. I would imagine the fusion is going to start around about the 15th of December. So you've probably got 2 weeks to recover your shards. I would definitely try and get a Warlord, or I would try and get one of those. So I just wanted to call that out. I definitely think going for Tormin, if you don't have him, like I don't have a Tormin, believe it or not. I've been playing the game for 4 years. I've never had Tormin. I started after he was the fusion, so I never managed to get him. You can get yourself a mythical tome. I don't really value mythical tomes because the majority of the champions don't need them. There are a few that need the cooldowns, but that's pretty much all you're buying. I don't really see much value in Ignore Resistance, to be honest. There's so much stats around. You can build enough stats. But the rewards are okay. Get a Sacred Shard and Immortal Soulstone. We're getting a legendary book. You will invest more than what you get. The only thing that value here is really in terms of investment is the Tormin, because you'll probably have to go pretty deep for a champion training event anyway. That would have given you the legendary book. You'll probably have to summon quite a lot, which is going to be more than the Sacred Shard and the Primal Shard and the Void Shard by quite a margin. So there we go. Anyway, that is the end of the video. I probably was a bit negative. I try not to be, but I'm seeing red flags. I'm seeing this bigger than, this is why I said when she said the words bigger than Doom Tower, I was like, I'll be the judge of it when you give me the detail, because 9 times out of 10, they've said one thing and the reality is it just the same, right? Is it just what it is before? Hopefully it's not just Doom Tower 2.0. Hopefully there is compelling challenges, but I do worry that curving the difficulty at hard Doom Tower, which was content released before you added 300% more stats, is just going to be too easy for a lot of accounts. And it's because it's too easy, it's going to be people go, so I waited all this time. I waited at 12 months for new content and I've completed it in a day. That's going to put people off. What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments below. Has this changed your opinion? Are you more positive than I am? Do you think I'm overlooking some things? Do you think I'm reading too much into it? Let me know in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next video.